loves, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Hi, hello, my name is Loey, and today we are going to be reacting to some really creepy imaginary friends stories. I found some of these terrifying stories that people have reported about their children's imaginary friends, and I just think these are so creepy. I remember, I don't know if I've ever told the story, so I'm not going to tell it again here. I'm going to have to like scour through all of my paranormal videos and figure this out, but I had a friend who had an imaginary friend that literally was telling her such dark things, and it was so weird, and like things that someone that I knew in middle school really should not have known. I had babysat kids who had creepy imaginary friends. I myself have had many imaginary friends now whom I wonder may or may not be ghosts. That's the thing, is how do you even tell if it's paranormal or it's an imaginary friend? So yeah, I'm gonna be telling you guys some of these really creepy short stories about parents' experiences with their kids telling them about like imaginary friends. So it's just like, Welcome to Nightmareville. I will be your guide. My son from the age of 3 always tells me about the creeper man who lives in my mom and dad's bedroom. He brings it up after he visits them. I made the mistake once of asking what he looks like. My son said, "Oh, he doesn't have a face." That just sounds like paranormal to me. That doesn't even sound like an imaginary friend. Ugh, he doesn't have a face. That is freaking terrifying. Imagine seeing that. Like, I don't even want to know what that kid was seeing. A parent of one of my students told us in a meeting that she was concerned because her son, 7 years old, talked about an invisible ghost who would talk to him and play with him in his room. He said the ghost was called the Captain and was an old white guy with a beard. The kid would tell his mom that the Captain told him when he grows up, his job will be to kill people, and the Captain would tell him who needed to be killed. I have chills. The kid would cry and say he doesn't want to kill when he grows up, but the Captain tells him he doesn't have a choice and he'll get used to killing after a while. That is really scary. Like, When my daughter was 3, she had an imaginary friend named Kelly who lived in her closet. Kelly sat in a little rocking chair while she slept, played with her, etc. Typical imaginary friend stuff, obviously. Anyway, fast forward 2 years later, the wife and I are watching the new Amityville, the one with Ryan Reynolds. I love that movie, by the way. And our daughter walks out right when the dead girl goes all the way black-eyed. Far from being disturbed, she said, "That looks like Kelly." "Kelly who?" we say. "You know, the dead girl that lived in my closet." No. Oh, that's so creepy. I'm definitely interested to know if any of you guys think that your imaginary friends growing up were like paranormal or ghosts or anything like that. Because sometimes I really look back at some of mine and wonder. I'm gonna try to see if my mom remembers any of my imaginary friends the next time I go home, because I'm really curious. There's one that I want to tell a story about, but I want some of her input first. But that one's really creepy. My cousin, when she was 5 and I was 17, had a stuffed rabbit that she talked to and carried everywhere. One day she was asleep on the couch while I was watching her, and she woke up and started yelling at her rabbit for no reason. One minute she was knocked out, the next she's awake, glaring at her rabbit, yelling, "No, you can't do that. That's bad. Don't do it," repeatedly. I asked her what was wrong, tried to get her to stop, but she wouldn't listen. I finally just took the rabbit up to her room, and when I came back down, she was asleep on the couch again. Screw whatever that rabbit was planning on doing. That's really strange. So, like, I guess in this they were saying that her stuffed rabbit was her imaginary friend. I mean, I used to give my like stuffed animals personalities all the time, but that is really weird to just start screaming at them and telling them they can't do that. That makes you wonder what the rabbit was saying. My little brother's imaginary friend, Roger, lived under our coffee table. Roger had a wife and 9 kids. Red flag number 1. Roger and his family lived peacefully alongside us for 3 years. One day, my little brother announced that Roger wouldn't be around anymore since he shot and killed him and his whole family. I literally have goosebumps. I don't know if he remembers any of this, but his genuine lack of remorse was very disturbing. When I was 16, I babysat twins who were in the 3rd grade at the time. They always spoke of a man in an Easter bunny costume, and they were terrified of him. One day I was babysitting and one twin was in the shower. His brother and I were sitting downstairs watching television when all of a sudden he said, "You need to go check on Matt." Seconds later, Matt yelled, "He's in here. He's in here." I ran upstairs and I had to check every room before he would calm down. I'm not sure which part of the experience freaked me out the most. So the man in the Easter bunny costume was like hopping around their house or something. I'm not gonna say anything, but that reminds me of something that happened to me when I was younger. It's like re-jogging all of my really scary memories from my childhood. When my mom was younger, she had an imaginary friend named Shaggy. When she was finished with Shaggy, she chopped him up and put him in the fridge. I don't know how to move on from that one, but when my brother was just learning how to talk, he grabbed one of those small toy hammers and crawled onto the sofa where my dad was sleeping. He leant in close and whispered one of his first sentences, "Smash daddy's head," right into his ear. Okay, that is one of the hugest reasons I'm afraid to have kids, is I hear all of these stories about kids just being so creepy. This isn't on here, but I read this one story from a mom where she had a sunburn and she woke up from a nap to her daughter standing over her, and her daughter whispered to her, "I want to peel off all of your skin and eat it." Like, no thanks, I'm good. Kids are so innocent, but like also so easily influenced, and they don't think anything about what they're saying. So I feel like a lot of the things that they don't think are weird are so creepy to us because they're just being so honest, you know? When my brother was little, he acted like he had angels talking to him every second. One day my mom overheard him say, "I can't kill him, he's my only dad." Ugh. My daughter used to tell me about a man who came into her room every night and put the sign of a cross on her forehead. I thought it was just a dream. Then my mother-in-law sent me over some family photos. My daughter looked right at the picture of my husband's father, who's been dead for 16 years, and said, "That's the man who comes into my room at night." My husband later told me that his father would always sign the cross on his forehead when he was young. But that's a really sweet paranormal story. Like, that's a really nice story. That makes me so happy. So wait, okay, so he had never even met his grandfather, but that's really cute. Still kind of scary, but cute. My wife and I overheard my 2-year-old daughter on the baby monitor wake up on Saturday morning and say, "What? Okay, I'll tell her." Then get up and come into our bedroom and told my wife, "Mary says you're doing a great job." Mary was her grandmother that she was extremely close to that passed away. Oh, that one's really sweet too. I have chills. Okay, this is number 13, so it better be really weird. As a kid, I said that my imaginary friend was a ghost. I called him Spooky Guy and said he died in the garage of the house on a hill behind ours. I even came up with his death. He was a 16-year-old who got in a car crash and walked to that house to ask to use their phone. Died in the 70s. The person that lived there grabbed him and abused him there and killed him. He was my imaginary friend as far back as I can remember. This scared my mom so much that she looked up records to see if that happened and got me a therapist. In high school, one of my best friends had a little sister who was 5 or 6 years old. One day we stopped by his place completely high because we needed to get his magic cards. While waiting for him to come downstairs, his sister told me, "Icy told me to ask you if you want to know when you're going to die." I laughed nervously. Morbid question, right? But I knew all about Icy, her imaginary friend. I even helped her draw a picture of him once. So I played along and said, "No, of course not. No one knows that. Hopefully when I'm very old." The girl shook her head sadly and said, "No, Icy wants me to tell you it'll be tonight." And with that, she just walked away. Yeah, I wouldn't go out anymore. Especially like, can you imagine this poor dude heard it while he was high? I would go home, go to sleep, and stay in bed. I was 17 and babysitting a friend of the family's 6-year-old. He had been in bed for a couple of hours and I just peeked in to check on him. He wasn't in the bed, and when I opened the door wider, I saw he was standing in the corner facing the wall. Creepiest thing ever. I asked him what he was doing, and all he did was turn around, smile, and put his finger to his lips as if to say, "Shh." I asked him again what he was doing, and all he says is, "Leave us. It's the punishment." The punishment for what? Oh, that's the stuff where I'm just like, that's not an imaginary friend. That's like a demon or something that's trailing your kid around. My grandfather had a camp on Lake Daring in New Hampshire when I was a kid. One day when I was 6 or so, I fell off the dock and into the water. I couldn't swim. While under, I distinctly remember seeing a little girl down there who told me to look upwards to the sun and just keep kicking and I'd be fine. I swam to the surface in time for my grandfather to swoop me up and pull me back on the dock. That's a sweet one. All of these really like nice ones are like giving me chills, you guys. That is really, really, really amazing. Like, that little girl probably saved his life, so it's not like a scare. It's still creepy, you know what I mean? Like, it gives you chills, but it's like a good story. When my boy was 4, his imaginary friend would sit in the corner of the room when you switched off the lights and light the room with red glowing eyes. That, my dear friend, is not an imaginary friend. Kid I used to babysit had imaginary friends. They were dead. One had no head, one was an old lady. They were both bloody. The one with no head had inside sticking out of his neck. I didn't ask him questions about them because screw that. When my niece was about 4, she had an imaginary friend, which I don't remember the name of. She would blame things she did on this imaginary friend, but also talk about how this friend would watch Scooby-Doo with her. One day I thought, why don't I find out more about this friend? So I asked her to tell me about her friend, and she said, she's a she, and she's dead. And I said, okay, does she have a job? She said she does what my daddy does, which is that her imaginary friend was a cop. Okay. So then I said, where is your imaginary friend a policewoman at? And she said, right next to where my daddy is a policeman. And I said, okay. But then she said, I met her when I was in my mummy's belly. She touched it when I was inside. A few months before my niece was born, my cousin Tracy had died. She was hit by a train. She loved watching Scooby-Doo and had a ton of memorabilia. She was also a cop. She was a cop in the town that is right next to the one my brother-in-law is a cop in, my niece's daddy. My niece's imaginary friend was my dead cousin. There's no other way she could have known all of that at the age of 4. When my kid was 4, we were watching a documentary on the Titanic. The scene was a picture of the schematics of the boiler room, and the camera panned from left to right over the plans. He pointed at the TV and said, that's wrong. The boilers were on the other side, and I was right there. And he pointed to a small space in the boiler room. That's where I was, and that's why I don't like water now. I've heard so many stories where kids remember their past lives. Like, look at this. Look at the goosebumps. I've heard so many stories where kids can remember their past lives and then they'll forget them when they get older, which is amazing and also freaking petrifying. Like, absolutely terrifying. When my sister was probably about 6 or 7, she had an imaginary friend named Emily. She told us Emily lived in her closet, wore an old black dress, and had long dark hair, and she was the same age as my sister. My sister played with Emily constantly, just in the middle of her room, whispering to Emily and acting a lot more distant towards them. I remember a very specific day. My brother was walking by her room and my sister was sitting in the middle of her room, but she turned around and hissed at him. He was scared. He told me it didn't even look like my sister. My parents ran up to her room and I could hear my sister just screaming and screaming as loud as she could, get out. I have no idea what happened in that room, but I ran to the bottom of my stairs and the screaming stopped. I saw my parents holding my sister, crying their eyes out, and she was sobbing as well. I've asked her about it today. She's 24 now. She told me that Emily used to tell her to do horrible things to herself. She actually used to wake up on the roof and not remember how she got there. I'm not kidding. Apparently, Emily absolutely hated my parents, so she turned my sister against them. She hates talking about it, so I never bring up that specific night. This all happened in my old house. When we moved into a different house, Emily was gone. I'm not making any of this up. My sister's little friend was a really big deal to my family and messed things up for a long time. I'm just relieved we left that house. Like, that's so dangerous. That's literally so dangerous. And how do you as the parent decide if that's an imaginary friend, if that's like a mental health thing, if it's paranormal, like, how do you know? When my younger brother was around 4, he had an imaginary friend named Victoria Meadowbrook. He told us that she was the prettiest girl ever and she floated above his bed at night. When my older daughter was 2 or 3, she used to have a couple of imaginary friends, Dodo and Dee Dee. They were typical imaginary friends. She would talk to them and play with them and tell me about their lives. Then one day when she was about 3, she was talking on her play phone when I walked into the room. She hung up her phone and said to me with a completely flat voice and deadpan expression, "The evil is coming." You guys, I think the kids are just so fascinating to me because I worked with them for a long portion of my life. If you didn't know, I was a babysitter, I taught Sunday school, I taught children's church, like I worked with kids, I worked in a nursery. So I've like heard a lot of this before. I have a lot of experience with kids. I love kids, don't get me wrong, but they're also scary as crap. Just because I think that they're so innocent, I think they can just sense things we literally cannot sense. I feel like they can see things we can't see, they can understand things we can't understand as adults. I think we get older and we almost lose that sense of innocence and we can't like see things for what they really are, you know what I mean? So some of these I'm sure were imaginary friends. Some of them may have been people struggling at a young age with like mental health problems or anything like that, and I don't want to discredit any of that. That's a very serious thing, but I do believe that multiple of these were paranormal, and it's really, really, really creepy. Like, imagine being a parent and your child just starts talking to you about this kind of stuff, and it's so scary. And like, how do you even decide like what it is? Like, where do you start? You know what I mean? I don't know, the whole thing is really cool, but I really enjoyed filming this video. So if you guys liked watching it, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.